now that we're more distant.
Just the way we used to do in the kitchen.
Yeah, like when we used to bail them out of the kitchen. Now we got to bail them out of the... But here we are. Good. It's all good. So... what have you been thinking about? Trying to bring Dharma to, not being able to bring Dharma to, all these, where the rubber hits the road in our lives. It's very helpful to others when we bring those dilemmas forth, or those questions forth, or those things that we do that work, and bring them to share. So what are your questions? Cynthia and then Dharma. Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. This is, it's not a question per se, but it's sitting here this, I'm going to do a Linda Logan and start crying.
Good. Zopa does it more now too. So
just sitting here this morning, and you were asking us to check in and be aware, and I was aware of such gratitude for this place, for this Sangha, for our teachers, for yesterday's teaching, for the tools that we're given to bring outside of this safe place and this very accepting, loving place. And even when Lama Michael isn't in the room, I know that we're in his heart, and when he's not here, he's taking care of our retreatants. So it's just full of gratitude.
Thank you, Cynthia. And that reminds me to let people know we just found out Lama Michael will be teaching tonight. Is that correct? We thought that he was still having to be out at the 3-year retreat, but evidently he'll be here tonight, so come back for that. Okay, Dharma.
Good morning.
Hi.
I haven't fully articulated this question, so hopefully you can find the question as I speak. Throughout my life, I've had moments or periods or episodes of experiencing or tapping into this deep sense of suffering that's happening, ebbs and flows. And likely for many of us, I feel saturated with the suffering that's occurring.
You feel what with it?
Saturated.
Saturated, yeah.
When I consider the suffering that's happening. And I'm wondering if you could offer, and I'll be attending some more teachings to assist in the development, the cultivation of my growth in this area, but if there are any teachings or suggestions that you could offer to assist in this.
Yeah, thanks. I'm curious about your word saturated. Can you say a little more what that's like for you or what it means? Yeah. You don't have to. If it overwhelmed.
It doesn't so much feel like a sense of being overwhelmed. It feels as if a deep visceral connection to that suffering. As if I'm experiencing that suffering, mine and others. So there's, in my mind, or my experience, it feels different than being overwhelmed, which would be a kind of like something's coming at me,
right,
versus I'm experiencing something from the inside out.
Okay. Well, first, rejoice rejoice because you feel that. That's part of Buddha nature. Just rejoice in that natural compassion. So you're experiencing the interconnectedness. I say rejoice because that's what teachers have told me when I ask something similar, and also because it's a truth, you know. Think of the pain of not feeling it, blocking it, cutting it off. So that's one thing. You know, the Buddha, I always come back to this. The Buddha says, I teach two things, suffering and the end of suffering. And then we need to peel that apart a little. So suffering is to be understood, to really see it. And that wakes us up. And then suffering is to be known, and the causes of suffering are to be abandoned. So that's the first of the Four Noble Truths. And then we sometimes forget because of all the suffering. See, we're in a strange situation right now where we can, due to the technology we're immersed in, we can learn about every kind of suffering in the world, or at least wherever the media chooses to go. You know, but right now, for example, what happened to Syria, oh, that's done because now we're on to Myanmar. And what happened to Haiti, oh, that's done because we went to Syria. And I just say that because there's just focus put on things. But truly, this suffering's been going on for all the time, whether we knew about it or not. That may not be any comfort, but it's just true. So the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, is really important to get a sense of. The cause is our own mind. So there's nothing, which is then I need to look at my reaction. Okay. So what's my reaction to all this suffering that I see? Really important to look. What's my reaction? I'll give an illustration. It might be better than me talking theory. I was at a workshop for Jews and Allies, it was called. And panel of Jewish people whose parents had been in the Holocaust or deeply affected by it. And then the next generation of Jews were talking about how that affected their families and everything. And the ally people, non-Jews, were doing this empathetic listening. Just no comment, just open your heart, just listen, don't judge. Just listen, see your own reaction. And at one point, I said something a lot like what you just said, like I'm feeling like I feel that suffering and it's really upsetting. And she said something very interesting. She said, it's not going to help us if you just suffer too. That woke me up. She was saying it's this purpose of hearing suffering, seeing suffering, opening the heart to suffering isn't that then you suffer. That's just one more person suffering. More suffering in the world. But for us to turn to the Dharma and say, how does it end this? How can I practice so that I end the suffering in my own mind and heart, and therefore become this kind of refuge space We become the refuge space. We can make that refuge space. So there's so many ways to do that. There are many, many practices. I'm going to share a couple I do. First of all, I simplify my life as much as I can, staying in the world. Of course, you can't really get away from the world. Even you go to a monastery, you can't get away. But simplify it, and that includes turning down the news and the media. One reaction to suffering is, I have to know everything about it. I have to keep track. I have to listen every day. I have to see, why did they do that? And why did they do that? And why did they do that? Now, to some point, that's okay. But at some point, it's increasing your anxiety, your anger, your reaction. You have to keep looking in your mind. Am I still bringing peace to this? Am I still bringing the wish for the end of suffering of everyone involved? Have I now, which the news often does, taken sides? The bad guys, the good guys. I'm with the good guys. Now, as soon as we do that, we've increased the suffering in the world. Me, us, and others. Anything us and others is increasing the suffering. So I look at the New York Times headlines each day, just the headlines, and I do it online so I don't have to listen. So it's less re-stimulating for me. And I choose which one I want to drop into. I try and use it as a practice. Oh, Myanmar. Oh my God. These people calling themselves Buddhists the Buddha would be horrified, except the Buddha never gets horrified. The Buddha would hold it in great compassion. Suffering on that side, suffering on this side, all creating suffering. Can I do that? Can I find my Buddha nature here and put that out? Can I then bring those folks to my cushion and have them here with the Buddha pouring light down on us? Or even while I'm reading the headline, saying, oh, ouch. My dear mothers, my dear brothers and sisters, may they be free. A person calling themselves a Buddhist and then advocating killing others. Ooh, that's some pretty big suffering there. Whoa. But if I want to punish them, or I'm angry, or I make a division, I've just added right in. We have to decide what we're doing, Which direction are we going to go? So take everything to practice, they say. Bring it on the path, and the suffering starts ending. First in your own mind and heart. It starts ending there. We have to start where we are, as Pema Chodron says. So we start here, see my own suffering while I read the news. Oh my God, it's so obvious. I'm very disturbed and very distressed. See it. Sit there. Wish myself free of that. Tone it down a little. Look at my capacity. Zopa's only able to do 15 minutes of this, and then she's caught, lost in the suffering realm, churning it up right with everyone else. So, turn it off, go to Tricycle Magazine online, read a little, watch a video, tune in to Thupten Chodron. What did she say today about Myanmar? Then you come back out, then you have something to offer to the world. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. It's so common of a question. It's what we're struggling with. Thank you.
I'm sure I'll ask it again and again and again, as I have before. I'll ask it again.
Yeah,
and
please
again
do. Yeah.
and again.
Yeah, and ask yourself again and again, and ask your wisest nature again and again. And then, you know, that piece about refuge I was talking about this morning, that's what we forget to do. And I'm talking about myself. I forget to go for refuge. I forget to bring the Dalai Lama's face to mind. But the minute I do, I go, oh, now I know how to meet this. His people are being tortured. He's been thrown out of his country. And he never calls for violence. He never, ever does. There's models in the world for how to do this. So calling our models to mind, our own teachers. Gosh, look what they've gone through, particularly the Tibetans. And the great care they bring into the world. All my older Tibetan teachers went through a true hell, hell. And they came out just totally happy to give us the Dharma. So lovingly, and never harping on their own personal stories about how awful it was. We had to drag it out of Geshe Kelsang, my other dear teacher, not the Kelsang of the new Kadampa tradition, that's a different Kelsang, but really say to him, we want to know your personal story. He said, why would you want to know that? We said, Geshe-la, it inspires us. Turns out his mother carried him across the Himalayas because he was 5 years old, and she carried him. And if she had not done that, we would not have had him as a teacher. And he was one of my first strongest teachers. So then we all thought, wow, we need to do some prayers of gratitude to Geshe-la's mother. But he would have never, he told a funny story. He said, what I knew about Americans was spam. And we said, why spam? And he said, because that was the food that Americans sent to the Buxar formerly concentration camp or prison camp, where the young monks all gathered and restored themselves and learned and taught. He said, you sent spam, and we thought that was so kind, because it kept us alive. Can you imagine? Oh my God, eating spam. Well, it's okay. Some people might like it. I grew up with some of it. But there you go. You just don't know. So, enough said. Yeah. Bill and Dora.
I really appreciate all that, Zopa. Just adding one thing is, as we all note, our news and information can often just find the worst things going on. And when I walk out my door and I see a neighbor enjoying the sunshine and walking their dog and giving me a friendly greeting, I think, that's fantastic. I go, if I have a coffee, there's this cheerful person, like makes this thing, it makes a beautiful thing on it, and they're creating this, one after another, and like somebody's small business is going well, and they're, happy about it, and they're working hard, and I'm, seeing that and participating in that, and et cetera, et cetera. The bus driver or the whoever, I mean, one after another, or, my friend is taking care of their parent, and, I mean, millions of fantastic things are happening, and I think if we don't, and we experience, see it every day, it's not even like far away, so you can look up cool stories far away too, but anyway, the idea of spending some time on that gratitude piece and on the joy, that you actually see, you see some kids who are like just having so much fun running around, and you just remember there is joy, and that's also shared. And gratitude for all the things that have come to us through interconnection. But at the same time, as we study in Buddhism, we see that these ups and downs are, what we're, anyway, are part of the cycle of suffering, that an up doesn't stay up and a down doesn't stay down. And as Zopa said, the idea of really learning about that is what a lot of what we're doing, and what we're hoping to work towards is where the happiness that we find is something that isn't of the nature of this transitory up and down sort of pleasures, but something that's a true freedom from suffering. But, so remembering that is taught to be possible, and that's, where we're heading, I think is somewhat comforting as well.
It doesn't depend on the external circumstances. That's what we need to see. So I'll put a plug in again for the Book of Joy by the Dalai. I mean, it's not by the Dalai Lama, but it's a week long of interviews of the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, and the reporter, I think his name's Abrams is the last name, I think, but it's called the Book of Joy, which is a great title, and it's how do you keep a mind of joy, compassion, constantly through the kind of hardships like Tutu and the Dalai Lama and their people live through. It's very inspiring and it's very instructive. Their minds are steady, joyful, spacious, and loving. So wherever they go, that's what they bring. They bring that world. Our minds are the world. So what kind of world are you adding to the world, we could say, Oh, good. Yeah, you're reading it. Yeah, I just recommend it to everyone. Salidra, where's the mic? Thanks. Where's the mic and where's Salidra? We need to put them together. Thank you.
Thank you. Dharma, right? When you were talking about your deep suffering, and as you shared Zopa and Dora, I might not have this absolutely correct, but I love the story of Avalokiteshvara as he was becoming enlightened and was on his way to nirvana. I've always had this image of a moving escalator going up there somewhere. Anyway, he was traveling to nirvana, and he turned around and he saw the suffering in the world and shed a tear, and that tear became Tara in Tibet and Kuan Yin in China. And I hear you over there with your tears, and I just bow to the tears and the compassion that I see is coming out of them.
Are you you're being recruited? Good. Cynthia.
Oh, gee. So sometimes I get up and there's this feeling of heaviness that in my brain I say, oh, today I'm depressed. And I used to try and fight it, we'll do all these things and make myself feel better. And now I've sort of gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, there's that feeling again. And so I just kind of watch it. And it takes a certain number of hours, but at a certain point, it's gone. It's not there anymore. So I'm just thinking about this in the context of some people in this discussion were talking about they see the suffering in the world around them and want to know how to work with that. I find I have this suffering inside myself that just kind of arises, and sometimes I could connect it to a cause, but more often than not, it's just there. Maybe it's a chemical imbalance, I don't know. And I guess you're describing ways of trying to look for the joy or look for the good, and I like those, and I do those kinds of things. But when I have this particular kind of sense in my body, it feels more helpful to not try and run away from it.
Yeah, not try to change it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this question, thank you. I love this question. To me, how I'm getting this is the teachings of the Buddha are so many approaches, so many approaches, and they can all be helpful. They say 84,000 teachings because there's so many kinds of people. But it's not a but. And the descriptions I was just making about touching compassion, transforming difficult situations into joy, those are mostly middle turning Mahayana techniques. They're like, see the whatever the klesha is, clearly identify it. Okay, depression. Well, I call it that, but I also see that that's a label. But you want to go, this is anger. Yep, this is anger, all right. I might be calling it irritation, impatience, but it's anger. And then you have a medicine chest full of techniques, methods. Technique sounds too minimizing, but methods to meet it. Anger, antidote, patience. Okay, how do I get there? I can do this thing called look at the disadvantages of anger. Every time I'm angry, this happens, this. Look at the advantages of patience, staying calm. And even you doing that, it's completely conceptual. But it does move you. It can move you along the way. Now, that's a different technique than this one of look, see, stay with the body sensations. Ooh, heavy right here, if it's depression. So-called depression, kind of down, feeling heavy. Okay, just be with it. In the body, what's my mind saying about it? Oh, that's bad. I got to get away from it. Cheer myself up, stiff upper lip, all that. So just see that, stay with it. But you see, it's a totally different method. Not totally. It's a different method. They're all very effective. It's quite good to get clear. We have this medicine chest full of methods. Mindfulness of body is a method. Mindfulness of mind. And you just went through them going, wow, then I see my story. I should not do this, but if I just stay with it, it seems to go probably, you didn't say this, but I'm assuming it goes away faster if you don't try to get rid of it. Yeah. Well, this is really something for us to learn. If we stop trying to get rid of these things, like trying to make them go away, then they go away quicker. Because why? Because it's the nature of everything is impermanent. It's real, true nature. But we don't let it be impermanent, even though it is. We grab it and say, this is the same depression as yesterday. And this is the same depression as an hour ago. And this is the same depression I've had all my life. No, that's just not even an accurate description. So we're starting to get that. I could let it go. And it will. But I have a long habit. I have a long habit of impatience when I drive my car. It's a long habit. It's not gone yet. And I see it. Oh, hi. Okay. You're all upset at the guy that's doing this and not signaling and turning here and going there. Okay. But don't add. We don't need to add. But that's a different method than seeing it and saying, I am going to apply an antidote. And I have learned these from study and meditation and teachers, and I'm going to apply it. It is also an antidote that you see it. Those are all antidotes in the big box, but, a specific antidote to anger, a specific one to attachment. I'll just tell you a quick one. For attachment, the antidote is give it away. I don't want to give my grandsons away to anybody. Forget it, they're mine. Well, they're going to be going away, at some point. So you put them in your little mandala and you give them away. You give them away to somebody who wants grandkids and doesn't have any. Not literally, but do it in your head. And then in doing that, you get to see what's in the way. You see your klesha. No. And you just see it and you greet it. Does that help, seeing that there's these different ways and what you're doing is perfect? Because we have to work where we are. What's in my mind? That's what to bring to the world is healing here. At the same time that we stay in touch with, I'm doing this not just for me personally, but it will affect my family. Then they go out happier. It affects school, it affects work, it affects everybody, and it just keeps going due to the truth of interconnectedness. Every single thing we think, say, or do affects all beings. That's a huge responsibility. But it's also really cool because we don't have to work really hard and run around the world. And, I'm glad some people do that and show up, Doctors Without Borders or whatever. And my fantasy is to be one of those, but I can't do that right now. I'm doing other things happily. But when we heal our mind, we heal the world. We say these things, but we don't really believe it. It is really true because of impermanence, because of interconnectedness, interdependence. So you're doing it. Well, thank you. If we could quit criticizing ourselves and saying we're not doing enough or not doing it right, that would be a helpful healing also, wouldn't it? Just to relax and think we're good enough. Jeez. I say that, this is my struggle. I constantly think I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm blah, 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 shut up. That's what I'm doing now with that voice. That voice that just starts in. I just launch into, okay, blah, blah, blah. I've heard you say this my whole life. Shut up. And go away. And say it, I'm not being mean. That's what I need to say to myself. Some people that'll feel too harsh for, but for me, that's what works. Yeah, Jane.
I think that heavy feeling in the morning, that depression, is something that a lot of people struggle with, and I was thinking about it in meditation and realized that I had sort of a vision of it as a really heavy, dark cloud hiding my Buddha nature, just hovering over that light in me. And I got up and made a cup of tea for my Buddha nature to strengthen it. It sounds really silly, but once I did that, it was like, okay, we'll get through this. That cloud's going to go away. It'll be okay.
I love that. I just, I can't remember how I bumped into this thing on the internet. You know how you bump into things because you went somewhere, but it got you somewhere else. And this woman, your story reminds me of this. This woman was talking about how important it is that we play with our negative states or our low states. And you played with it. You said, I'm going to make tea for the Buddha part. That's very playful. And I've been playing with her ideas this week. She said she has been working with people on diet and weight stuff, you know, like how hard that is for us to face and do. And she has them play that they are a superhero. And in a playful way, not a driven way. But I am a superhero who is going to do this. I'm going to my kitchen. I'm going to conquer this. And I'm going to eat a cantaloupe, not a pint of ice cream, because that's what superheroes do. And it's been having incredible effects for some folks. So I've been doing that with my kleshes when they show up. Like, I see you, and Zopa, Super Zopa. She's not going there, she's going to compassion. It's very fun. It's very fun, you know? And it doesn't have anything to do with a fight because you know it's a comic book character, you know? But it really works, you know? It really works in some moments. So we can become creative, and I really love that. That's a creative solution. We get so heavy about applying this and that. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. Yeah. Bill, did you have some? Super Bill. To the rescue.
No, I don't have anything to say.
How about just plain Bill?
Just plain Bill. Plain Bill.
All right, there we go. I love this thread. There are so many different ways to dance with this.
Yes.
There's so many different ways to dance, and sometimes it is really helpful to just create a new dynamic story, because we can't simply just tell ourselves to shut up, because that just doesn't work. It becomes a fight. But creating kind of a new dynamic story where you're going to, let's make a cup of tea for the Buddha nature. And it has this kind of this positive, creative energy to it that is introduced into our stream of being, and this is a good thing to do. So there are a lot of ways that this falls into the kind of the category of antidotes that kind of, what's that? Or Vajrayana, but they're all of Vajrayana practice in a certain way is stepping into this different story that actually. This is all the play of the Buddha mind, and I'm Chenrezig, and kind of it's just a play of what's going on. So you can carry this, but just in ordinary ways, I think it's really good to be able to have notice that we could actually keep the depression kind of on simmer for days and just keep on turning up the heat a little bit by a kind of story that just sustained it. Even if the story was, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. So there are a bunch of things. We can, and I think it's really necessary to kind of carry this as sort of a foundation. And in this, there's always some kind of confidence that the situation is workable, The Buddha, as you said, didn't just teach suffering, period, and the end of suffering. So that there's some kind of power in the confidence of keeping that in mind, and then you start to kind of feel like there's some space. There's some space there, and all these different ways are ways to create this kind of space, or to find, or even just you discover this space, and the more relaxed we can be with these circumstances, at the most profoundly relaxed relationship with it, it's not even a matter of saying the cloud will go away. There's nothing. You can start to look at the cloud, and the cloud becomes very different when you relax with it. And I think that's the experience that you're kind of starting to have. Part of this is the more relaxed we get, the more we can even give up on the idea that the cloud will go away.
Yeah.
And that then can allow us to look even more clearly, more relaxed, be in the middle of it, see more deeply into the nature of what is actually arising, and find deeper and deeper degrees of freedom right in the middle of what's arising. So but it requires this a kind of a general confidence and an ability to find some way to play with it, dance with it, that's not contributing to it, that's not accelerating it, making it deeper. All these things are really necessary to start out with. And then within that, we can kind of relax more and more. And as we relax more and more, and our kind of the vivid clarity and insight deepens, it opens up more and more. But this is, it's really important in this to have a sense of real gentleness about this, and not like it's a moral obligation to feel one way or another, to be able to do this exalted thing right off the bat. That's another story that's not going to work very well. So I love make a cup of tea.
Make a cup of tea for the Buddha in you.
Relax.
Yeah. Last piece. Salidra.
So I just have to throw in a little plug for self-compassion here, which hasn't been mentioned. Not only does it have unlimited spiritual backing, but there is a plethora of research that self-compassion diminishes anxiety, depression, increases self-esteem, and a lot of other wonderful things that we are all talking about. And to turn toward the parts of ourselves that are suffering with loving kindness and compassion is a very kind and gentle thing for us to do for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're all saying. For me, it's very compassionate to tell that part of myself to get out. And so compassion is going to require a wide continuum of activities. So you will be, as Salidra's pointing out, it's pointing out to be your own doctor, and the self first, first self in order to do others, since there's no real difference, since we're completely intertwined. Yeah.
And your own lover.
Yeah.
And
however
your own teacher.
You define it. Yeah. But thank you. Those are really good resources. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Lama Michael will be here tonight at 6:30, and on Wednesday we'll have Chenrezig. So, see you soon.